Rock Jumpers, Episode 2. The atmosphere aboard the RJS Endeavour was a maelstrom of contrasting emotions as the ship orbited the enigmatic planet below. The crew, weary and diminished from their harrowing encounter with the planet's fearsome inhabitants, bore the weight of loss and exhaustion. Yet, against this somber mood was a current of electric excitement that crackled through the communication channels from ROCKJUMPERS Corporation. The discovery of an unknown, incredibly valuable resource on the planet had ignited a fervor among the corporate ranks, a fervor for wealth and prestige that seemed to overshadow the very real dangers the crew had just faced. Captain B.N.Rocker, his features etched with fatigue and the residue of battle, received the corporation's directive with a heavy heart. Despite their losses, despite the plea for return, the order was unequivocal. Remain in orbit. The corporation's ambitions stretched far beyond the immediate safety of the crew, aiming to secure the mining rights to the planet by establishing a permanent base. Such a foothold was not just a claim to the riches beneath the surface, it was a beacon of ownership, a flag planted in alien soil that declared the world and its treasures the property of the ROCKJUMPERS Corporation. Reluctantly, Captain Rocker convened his crew, conveying the orders with a voice that carried both his reluctance and the resolve to see through his duties. "We're not heading home. Not yet," he announced, his gaze sweeping across the faces of his crew, each shadowed by the recent ordeal. "ROCKJUMPERS wants a base on the surface, a claim to this place. It's on us to make that happen." The tension in the room was palpable, a mix of disbelief, anger, and a hardened determination to endure what was to come. The next phase of their mission centered on the deployment of a prefabricated base, a marvel of engineering designed to withstand the harshest alien environments. As the crew gathered in the hangar, the base, compacted into its transit form, loomed like a behemoth. The technology was cutting edge, incorporating adaptive materials and AI-assisted construction drones that would unfold and assemble the structure upon landing. A 50-yard by 50-yard walled-in safe zone. Rocker orders, "Drop the base, we will follow." Yet, as they prepared to escort this technological marvel to the surface, the crew was beset by apprehension. Each member knew the risks, remembered the creature's ferocity, and understood the daunting task of establishing a foothold in such a hostile world. Captain Rocker oversaw the operation with a keen eye. "We know what's waiting for us," he addressed his crew, his voice a firm anchor amidst the swirling doubts. "But we've got a job to do. For those we've lost, for those waiting for us to return, we'll get this base up and running." As the dropship carrying the base began its descent towards the planet, a tension filled the cabin. The crew, strapped in and grim-faced, watched the planet's surface approach, a world that had shown them both wonder and horror. The descent was a journey back into the lion's den, a deliberate march towards an uncertain fate, guided by duty and the faint hope of wealth. As the dropship touched down and the prefabricated base began its automated unfolding process, the sounds of the alien jungle filled the air, a reminder of the planet's hidden guardians. The crew stepped out, their resolve hardening at the sound of distant cries, the familiar roars of the creatures that awaited them in the shadows. "Marshals to the walls, men to work. The sooner we get it done, the sooner we can leave," Captain Rocker commanded. As the automated systems of the prefabricated base came to life, its panels and structures unfolding like a metallic flower blooming in fast forward, the alien jungle around them seemed to respond. The distant cries of the planet's fauna grew louder, a discordant symphony that hinted at an imminent storm of flesh and fury. The space marshals swiftly moved into position, their training and instincts taking over. They established defensive perimeters along the unfolding walls of the base, their weapons at the ready, eyes scanning the dense foliage for any sign of movement. The men worked feverishly to bring the base's systems online. Their fingers danced across control panels, activating defense mechanisms, environmental shields, and communication arrays. Each system coming to life was a small victory, a step closer to establishing a foothold on this hostile world. A man yells out, "Comms up but not running. We are deaf and blind, sir." The contrast between the two groups was stark. On one side, the marshals' training and instincts was their motivation, their faces set in grim lines, weapons poised for an onslaught. On the other, the technicians and scientists, their actions was fueled by a mixture of fear and adrenaline. But their concentration was unwavering as they navigated the complexities of the base's technology. As the base continued to take shape, its automated defenses coming online, the distant cries of the creatures grew closer, more fervent, as if the very land itself resented the foreign structure. The marshals tightened their grip on their weapons, exchanging brief, solemn nods of readiness. They were the thin line between survival and annihilation. In the dense foliage that fringed the newly forming base, the first sign of trouble stirred. A solitary creature, its exoskeletal frame a shadow against the vibrant alien underbrush, cautiously peered over the ridge facing the south wall. The air thick with anticipation as the marshals atop the wall held their breath, their eyes locked onto the creature. Captain B.N.Rocker, standing resolute among his marshals, his gaze fixed on the horizon, felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. "See him, sir?" one of the marshals whispered. "Yeah, I see him," Rocker replied, his voice steady. With a deliberate motion, he reached for a pulse rifle, its sleek design belying the devastating power it housed. His hands, steady despite the situation, adjusted the weapon's settings, his fingers flicking the rifle to the overload setting, a risky maneuver designed for dire situations. The rifle hummed, a growing whine that filled the silence, warning lights blinking in protest against the imminent strain. The creature, sensing the impending danger, tilted its head, its primal instincts on edge. Then, with a precision that belied the tension of the moment, Rocker fired. The pulse rifle discharged with a thunderous roar, a streak of energy cutting through the air, finding its mark between the creature's eyes. The impact was immediate and catastrophic. The creature's head exploded in a shower of alien ichor, its body crumpling to the ground, the pulse rifle smoking and depleted of power. The marshal says, "Nice shot, sir." Yet this act, a display of power and precision, was but a spark in a powder keg. What followed was a cacophony of roars as a herd of the creatures crested the hill. They charged, a tidal wave of flesh and fury, propelled by the scent of their fallen kin. The marshals, spurred into action by Rocker's leadership, opened fire, a barrage of energy pulses lighting up the twilight. Rocker, moving along the wall, issuing commands. "Focus fire! Hold the line!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the howls of the oncoming horde. The creatures, undeterred by the defensive hail, closed the distance with terrifying speed, their movements a blur of agility and primal rage. The marshal's discipline under Rocker's command held the creatures at bay, but only just. Each fallen creature was replaced by two more, their numbers seemingly endless, their ferocity undiminished. In the midst of the chaos, the base's automated defenses sprang to life, turrets joining the fray, their firepower adding to the wall of death that greeted the attackers. Yet, even with the technological might at their disposal, the marshals were hard-pressed, the creatures' resilience and sheer numbers a relentless tide, threatening to overwhelm them. Rocker, his orders, delivered with surgical precision, orchestrating the defense, maximizing the effectiveness of their limited numbers and firepower. His presence on the wall, rifle in hand, firing alongside his marshals, was a testament to his commitment to his crew, to their mission, and to the survival of all under his command. As the battle raged, the ground before the south wall became a no-man's land of fallen creatures and churned earth, the air filled with the stench of ozone and alien blood. The marshals, their energy weapons glowing hot with continuous fire, fought with a desperation born of the knowledge of that failure meant their deaths. Yet, in every shout of command from Rocker, in every coordinated volley of fire, there was a thread of hope, a belief that they could hold the line, that they could survive the onslaught and secure the base, his leadership keeping his men's hope alive. As the battle for the base raged on, the situation grew increasingly dire. The energy shields, a shimmering barrier between the crew and the relentless onslaught of the exoskeletal raptors, began to flicker and falter under the sustained assault. The sight of the weakening shields sent a wave of desperation through the ranks. They knew all too well that the shield's failure would leave them exposed to the primal fury of the creatures that seemed determined to reclaim their world from the human intruders. In the midst of the chaos, moments of personal bravery emerged like beacons in the dark. A young marshal, recognizing the imminent breach, charged forward to manually reboot a failing shield generator, his actions buying precious seconds for his comrades. Another, a technician, jury-rigged the base's communication array to emit a high-frequency pulse, disorienting the attackers and stemming their advance, if only momentarily. Despite their efforts, the tide of battle turned irrevocably when the shields gave out, disappearing with a final desperate flicker. The marshals, now standing on the brink, faced the creatures head-on, their weapons blazing trails of defiance into the encroaching horde. The base's automated turrets, their barrels glowing red from continuous fire, overheated and shut down one by one. Captain Rocker, amidst the bedlam, remained a pillar of strength. With a heavy heart, he gave the order that every commander dreads: fall back to the center, prepare for full evac. His voice, though strained, carried the weight of his resolve and the depth of his commitment to the safety of his crew. The defenders, rallying to his call, executed a fighting retreat, covering each other as they fell back to the dropship, their last hope for escape. The moments that followed were a blur of motion and emotion. Crew members, marshals, and scientists alike scrambled onto the dropship, their faces etched with the scars of battle and the specter of loss. Captain Rocker, ensuring every last person was aboard, made his way to the cockpit. With the creatures swarming over the hull, their weight and ferocity threatening to anchor the ship to the ground, the situation seemed hopeless. The dropship, designed for rapid deployment and retrieval, was ill-equipped to lift off under such conditions. Yet, in the face of certain doom, Rocker's command was unwavering. Wiggle and thrust, boost us the hell out of here. The pilot, his hand steady at the controls, executed a series of evasive maneuvers, the ship lurching and twisting in a desperate attempt to dislodge the creatures clinging to its exterior. The engines, pushed to their limits, roared in protest as the ship struggled to gain altitude. Then, with a sudden surge of power, the boosters ignited fully, propelling the dropship away from the planet's surface, shedding the creatures into the void as it broke free from the planet's grasp. As the dust settled and the adrenaline began to wane, Captain B.N.Rocker conducted a quick head count. To his astonishment, every soul that had embarked on this perilous endeavor was accounted for. "We left with everyone, and we've returned with everyone," Rocker murmured, a sense of relief washing over him. Turning to address his crew, his voice was steady and imbued with profound gratitude. "Your bravery out there today is what saved us. Thank you," he said, his words echoing in the cramped space of the dropship, binding the crew together in their shared ordeal. As he moved among his crew, offering words of thanks and acknowledgement, Rocker's gaze fell upon a marshal who had paid a grievous price in the battle. The man had lost a leg, now sutured off just below the knee. Rocker approached him, stopping a respectful distance away. With a solemnity reserved for the most sacred of moments, he saluted the marshal, an acknowledgment of his sacrifice and bravery. In response, the one-legged man, through a haze of pain and with a grimace that spoke volumes of his determination, he pushed himself. With the makeshift tourniquet staunching the flow of blood, the marshal stood on his remaining leg. "No, thank you, sir, for saving us," his voice cutting through the murmur of the ship. Raising his hand in a salute, he met Rocker's gaze, his expression a complex tapestry of pain, pride, and an unyielding spirit. The moment hung in the air, a poignant testament to the indomitable will of those who had faced death and emerged not unscathed, but undefeated. Witnessing this exchange, the men around them felt a surge of emotion, a collective recognition of the marshal's valor and the captain's leadership. Tears welled in the eyes of hardened soldiers, not as a sign of weakness, but as a tribute to the strength and sacrifice embodied by their comrade. Their return would not mark the end of their journey, but the beginning of a new chapter in the saga of humanity's quest to conquer the unknown. The battles they had fought, the fears they had overcome, and the lessons they had learned would resonate through the ages, a reminder of the cost of reaching into the darkness and the light that can be found there. And so, with the galaxy stretching out before them, the crew of the RJS Endeavour faced the future, forever changed, forever bound by the ties of shared adversity, and forever driven by the unquenchable human spirit to survive. This is not goodbye, nor the end. Until the story continues, my friends. B.N.Rocker.